This story dates back to the 1990s, in a southern city where such a tale was widely circulated. The story was told to me by an aunt, and the person involved was her colleague, meaning this is a personal experience that happened while the aunt was working at a factory. Let's rewind back to the mid-1990s. At that time, the aunt who told me this story was working in a state-owned factory. She had a fairly close colleague, though not inseparable like best friends. They would often chat about everyday life and sometimes have lunch together in the cafeteria. This colleague was 2 years older than the aunt, who was in her 30s at the time. The colleague was already married and had a child. From the time the aunt started working at the factory, she had been looked after by this elder sister. However, the aunt never imagined that a peaceful factory life could lead to an event that would leave her puzzled for the rest of her life. One summer, the elder sister, who usually got along very well with the aunt, suddenly had a drastic change in temperament. Normally a warm-hearted and talkative person, she became distant one morning when the aunt greeted her, as if she didn't want to engage at all. The elder sister also began frequently arguing with her husband and child, but unlike before, she no longer confided in the aunt. This time something seemed very serious, as she had never been so impolite. The aunt greeted her several times that morning, but the elder sister didn't even turn her head and walked straight into the workshop. This was the first sign of something unusual, and it got worse. The elder sister began talking to herself, muttering things that didn't seem related to work or life. Sometimes the aunt would secretly listen to what she was saying and often heard her whispering things like, "My time is running out, it's almost over." It seemed as though she was speaking about ending her life or expressing particularly pessimistic thoughts, which frightened the aunt. Initially, the aunt thought that something might have happened in the elder sister's personal life, but as time went on and the muttering continued, she began to suspect that there was something mentally wrong. Being co-workers, the aunt gradually tried to comfort the elder sister and ask her what was wrong, but the elder sister could never clearly explain. If questioned too much, she would become hostile, sometimes even using foul language, which eventually led the aunt to give up on her. It wasn't long before the situation became even more serious. The elder sister stopped coming to work altogether, and rumors started spreading around the factory. Some said she had depression, others said her drastic change was related to a den of weasels in the factory's backyard. Still others claimed her husband had an affair, driving her mad, and that she had been committed to a mental hospital, unable to work anymore. In these large factories, workers often faced immense physical demands but found little mental stimulation. As a result, when a topic like this arose, it spread rapidly among them. One afternoon, the workshop supervisor suddenly gathered everyone and said, "Everyone, please listen. I have some unfortunate news. There's been an incident in our workshop." He told them that the elder sister who hadn't been to work for days had passed away. He asked everyone to remain calm and expressed his own sadness. The next day, around 10 people from the workshop, along with factory leaders, went to pay their respects at the elder sister's home, where her body lay. Nothing seemed unusual. She lay quietly with her eyes closed. However, something strange caught their attention for the first time. They saw someone wearing a scarf around their neck during a wake. The elder sister had never had this habit, and no one knew why her family had added this accessory. When asked about the cause of death, the family could not provide a clear answer, only stating that it was an accidental sudden death. As the aunt told me the story, I grew increasingly anxious and asked her what had happened next. She hesitated, saying that what followed was something eerie and inexplicable, something she couldn't even believe herself. It turns out the elder sister's husband had been coming to the factory repeatedly over the past 2 months, causing disturbances in the leaders' offices, though the workers were unaware of this. After about 6 months, the factory's upper management informed the workshop supervisor of the full story during a meal. When the supervisor heard the details of the elder sister's death, he got goosebumps all over. Being somewhat loose-lipped, the supervisor relayed the entire story to some of his closer colleagues. The elder sister's husband had told the factory leaders that they had to take responsibility for his wife's death, even though it wasn't a workplace injury. He believed that something evil had followed her from the factory, causing her untimely death. Otherwise, how could she have seen her head missing in the mirror days before she died? The husband explained that about 10 days before she died, his wife had suddenly screamed while looking in the mirror one morning. He and their child rushed over to ask what had happened, and she claimed that her head was missing in the reflection. He assured her that her head was still there, but she insisted that in the mirror she couldn't see her head. This terrified both the husband and child. Thinking it was a problem with the mirror, she started checking every mirror in the house, and it only got worse. She claimed that none of the mirrors showed her head. The husband, a boiler operator in the factory, had never encountered anything like this before. He could see her face in the mirror, but she was adamant that her head was missing. From that point on, her behavior became increasingly erratic. She stopped cooking, cried all day, and covered all the mirrors in the house with clothes and blankets. She even threw away all the small mirrors. The husband didn't know how to handle the situation, and they had a fight during which he noticed her speech was incoherent. He suspected that she had been affected by something evil at the factory, given the rumors of unclean spirits there. He demanded that the factory leaders take responsibility, claiming that without the factory's influence, his wife wouldn't have seen herself headless in the mirror. The factory leaders were horrified by the husband's story and hastily reassured him that they would provide compensation and discuss the matter further later. After the husband left, the leaders began discussing what they had heard. How could someone foresee their own death? Days before, she saw herself headless in the mirror, and then she really lost her head in a freak accident involving a steel wire. The story spread quickly throughout the factory, with various theories emerging. Some said it was a premonition of death, where she was somehow aware of her impending fate. Others claimed it was the work of the weasels rumored to haunt the factory. Regardless of the explanation, the story became widely known among the workers. The aunt concluded by telling me that this was indeed a true event, and she had no reason to exaggerate or fabricate the story, especially since it involved her now deceased colleague. That's the end of the story. I don't have a definitive conclusion. Some might believe it was a supernatural event, while others might attribute it to coincidence or mental illness. Whatever you believe is up to you.